First off, welcome. Goddamn it, welcome. Are you ready? You ready?
This is the Bernie's Daughter Podcast.
I ain't scared of you, motherfucker.
The show where you get a front row seat to the magic,
Are you ready?
humor, and wisdom of the late, great Bernie Mac, as seen through the eyes of his loving daughter.
I don't care about you talking about me.
And his famous friends.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the very first episode of the Bernie's Daughter Podcast. I am so excited you are joining me today. And when you see my first guest, you will be even more excited. My first guest is true comedy royalty. And when I was thinking about who should be my first guest, it was a no-brainer. His name immediately came to mind because of his genuine connection with my dad. He is a true Renaissance man. He's a comedian, actor in TV, film, and voice. He's a game show host, an all-around entrepreneur with his own wine, Zeta Wine, as well as AC Barbecue Rubs with his good friend Anthony Anderson. And if that wasn't enough, he has now added novelist to the list. Please welcome to the Bernie's Daughter Podcast, the one, the only, the legendary king of comedy himself, Cedric The Entertainer.
You know it's so great that you named this podcast exactly how people call you. You talking about Bernie's Daughter? That's funny. That's so.
Because you know they don't say my name.
Your whole existence was Bernie's Daughter.
From the time, as I tell people, as far back as I can remember, even before he became famous, like in the neighborhood, people used to call him Black. And I remember when I used to go to walk into the neighborhood store, the guys would be on the basketball court. Oh, that's Black's daughter right there. Like, there's never been a time in my life. That's not what I
be yourself.
I can't. Like, so I just said, you know what? Fine. That's what y'all want me to be. That's what I'm going to be.
That's great. No, that's awesome.
Yes. So thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate it. I'm so excited to have you as my first guest. And I'm really appreciative of you because you're always so kind and gracious. As far back as I can remember, every time I used to see you backstage, you were always kind and gracious. And now, since my dad has been gone, when you're in interviews, you're always gracious to my dad. So I just really appreciate you for that. Thank you.
Yes, no doubt. I mean, he was, I was talking about him yesterday. Of course, people just love Bernie, and then his presence has always existed. And of course, whenever you talk about the Kings, but I was just talking about how I really, really appreciated that because it's been almost 15 years plus, and yet his presence is still really relevant even to younger people. And I think that's a testament, one, to his brand of comedy, and of course, his legacy of how everybody remembers him. So whenever people speak of him, and I think that's very important, that for him being a friend and somebody close, come ride, and we toured together, for other people to see him as the same way. And then for him to still have so much reverence and relevance in today's world, so because people just keep it moving, man. That's a real thing.
Yes. I'm so glad you said that, because that is the exact reason why I started this podcast. Like, if you had told me 15 years ago when my dad died that people would still be talking about him the way they are today, I would have been like, really? Like, I mean, I'm happy about it, but really? Like, it's almost, for me, it feels like that part of 2008 where he was at the height of his fame hasn't changed. It hasn't gone away. So for me, it was really important, like you said, so that the people who are coming up now and being introduced to him, that they get to see and know him for not just the king of comedy, because that's going to always be a part of y'all legacy, but just for who he was as a person. That's really important to me. So that's one of the biggest reasons behind this podcast.
No doubt. It's a beautiful thing. So it's awesome. Congratulations.
Thank you. So I do want to get into the book, but because this is the Bernie's Daughter Podcast, of course, we've got to talk about my dad. So do you remember the very first time you met my dad?
Yeah, actually, I was doing they used to do the Miller Genuine Draft comedy circuit, right? So, and I was living with an uncle, in Chicago. I was kind of transferring. I've been doing good. I'm from St. Louis, so I've been going back and forth. And Chicago, again, was the closest city where it was a lot of great comics at that time. You know, Bernie, Dale Givens, George Wilborn, Tony Schofield. It was a lot of comedians coming out of there that were in our age group, if you will, in that cast. And then, of course, you know, so many others have come since, you know, like, you know, of course, D. Ray and Laurel and so many others, Dion Cole, like so many legendary comics out of Chicago. But during that time, those were the guys, right? Like these were and Bernie had won. He had won the year before, so he was already legendary. People already spoke of him as the bigger brother, the dominant comedian, you know, the alpha. Everybody know the alpha comedian, right? You like, oh no, he better be quiet before Bernie coming in, you know, like it's like, damn, dog, ain't he one of us? He's like, oh, you bet you ain't. You don't want none of that. Oh, okay, so, but I just remember being a young comedian at this little club. Felt like we was like either it felt like it was in Harvey. Like I can't remember if it was exactly in Harvey, but it was outside of Chicago, and it was you know, Chicago area. And I did my set. Cool. Then I heard Bernie Mac was there, and so he went up on stage, and I was just kind of sitting to the side. And he came through. He was like, "You gonna be all right? You gonna be all right?" And that was it. It was the stamp. It was the stamp of me gonna be all right. Was hey man, I took that. It was like I was happy as hell. I was like, nigga, Bernie just walked up to me, told me I was gonna be all right, man. So that was it. So, you know, of course, as the competition went on, I stayed in, and I would see him a few more times because he was the past winner, one of the past winners. So he would be around. I think he ended up being a judge. And so, you know, those were those little moments, and still very small bursts. My one that I figured out where I felt like I got to know him the most was we were shooting Def Jam, and it was his second time, my first time. And, you know, we went to lunch. You know, he remembered me from the competition. He took me to lunch. And I always love to say this because it's New York. So, you know, because when I say, yeah, we went to lunch, it sounds like something really fancy. I know that everybody in their mind are like, oh, did y'all go to Tavern on the Green? Did you go to? No, we went to Sbarro's. Who's that? Sbarro's Pizza. And we had lunch. No, but it was done.
I love it. No, y'all didn't have Def Jam didn't pay.
No. We went to Coney's, you know, the great steak restaurant where Bernie took care of all the meals for everybody. No, that's not it. No, we was at Sbarro's and we had a steak. We got on out of there. So, but I just remember that he was telling me, you know, this was when I call it the most famous 8 minutes in comedy, but this was his I Ain't Scared of You Motherfucker show. But you know, he was basically, even at lunch, he was just telling me not to be afraid of the New York audience. He was like, you know, you can't let them intimidate you. That was the big thing. You know, he was like, you know, he felt like he had a good first showing, but he felt like he was intimidated by New York and in that. So he was like, I ain't scared of you motherfuckers. That's where, and he meant that, and he ended up saying that in the show and becoming what I call the most famous 8 minutes of comedy. He was like, he literally was gone after that moment. He was way past the rest of us. We was like, damn, we went from being on the show with us to a superstar. We was still back there like trying to make our name, but that was it.
That's amazing. For me, I remember all of these moments because I was a kid watching it happen. Yeah. So for me, it's like, oh, Dad. So I love getting to hear, you know, all of you different comedians talk about it because I get to see him through your eyes as, you know, a peer of yours. So yeah. What is it that you think about my dad's comedy that makes it so to the point where it stands out all these years later?
You know, I think, you know, for the most part, it hits home. Like, I think you said a lot of things, like, you know, the fact that he's just well known in his community. People knew him as, you know, as a brother or a respectable person, just as a dad or a husband locally, right? So he takes that essence of being like a real dude and puts it on stage. And so I think that's what you really get. You just kind of get this authentic real person saying something that they don't even really think funny. Like, maybe he just, I just got something to say right here. And then we all dying because you saying it so real that you like, wait a minute, are you serious right now? And, if you know Bernie, it's really a combination of both. It's a little mischief, and he just kind of see it that way. And yet at the same time, he's fearless in the fact that I can deliver you this point of view that I'm actually thinking. Like, I'm thinking like, wow, I'm not taking nothing from these little kids. I ain't taking that. And I'll be the little kid to the white meat. And you like, man, like, who says that out loud? And then he like, with the delivery is so emphatic, it's so real that you like, I think he means that. That makes it even funnier. And you like, all right, cool. That's crazy.
Oh, yes. I'm so glad you said that. Like, who says that?
Yeah.
I've seen your interview on Club Shay Shay where you were talking about how he wouldn't be able to get away with those jokes today. And people get mad at me when I say that. I'm like, he couldn't say not even like half, 3/4 of his material today.
I was watching the Kings of Comedy. This is, again, we've been on tour with him. So the Kings wasn't even Bernie was a person that has so much material. He would do different jokes like every night. Like people, you come to know that it was not like this dude went up and did a routine every night. We used to love it. We used to go on the side and go, we don't know what we gonna get tonight. Cause some nights, whatever he owned, like if he just on cab drivers and he don't like the way they picked him up at the airport, he got 20 minutes, 30 minutes on that just going in, and you have no idea. So all the other comics, that's what we call them a comics comic, because we would all go to the side of the stage and watch B. Like, all right, he about to come on. And if you sit in your room chilling, the comics go come get, hey, Sid, Bernie about to go on. Oh, okay, bet. I'll be out there. And that was because we don't know what's getting ready to come out. And it was always, but I think that's, again, that's when certain people are comedians, comics. Like, we just love the way that they have this ability to walk out on stage and be free, like super free, and just let it go.
Yeah, I agree. And it's so funny that you said that, like, you never knew what he was going to talk about, because I get tagged on TikTok today of sets from when y'all were on tour that he's talking like about me, like my wedding and stuff. And I'm like, I didn't know he did. Like, what?
Yeah. It was that day. It was the day he thought about your wedding, and he walked out of there and just was like, this is how I feel about this. Like, are these jokes? Or are you like saying stuff? Like, that's how I was always like.
Yes. Because that's how people respond to it. Like, oh my God, did this really happen? And I'm like,
it just, yeah. I mean, from my perspective, I didn't see it that way, but now that somebody said it as such, right. Yeah, that happened.
Oh man, I love it. So when you think back on your time with my dad, is there anything that you wish you could have said to him that you didn't get a chance to say?
I think the biggest thing for me was that I always really wanted us, of course, to be able to go back out. We did the thing where we had a great success, something unique that, took off. And, for as what I probably regret most is that we weren't the mature businessmen that we all grew to be, to recognize that we have a brand that has so much legacy, right? Like, even now, Kings of Comedy is a thing. You can throw it out there in a thing. And had we been, wiser and smarter and been able to, kind of get past the individualism that comes with fame, like everybody has their own agents and managers, and next thing you know, you got your thing that you're doing, and I don't have. We would have owned something that's, as relevant and big as it is today. It would have more other than just the movie. We would have, the branding, the T-shirts, the mugs, the podcast. We could name, the series radio show could be the Kings of Comedy Radio. Like, these things would have been branded as ours, and it would have been a really, a really unique legacy to live. And, he got ill, right? At the time we were really thinking about trying to do it again. Matter of fact, I talked to him a lot around that time and was, we were trying to figure out how to, do a bus tour so he wouldn't have to be on a plane, like anything, like so we can just be together, And so that was just super unfortunate, man.
Yeah, he had a lot of plans. Like at the end, he wanted to do a comedy special himself. We were working on a pilot for a new show, and then it just out of nowhere. So yeah. So
I think that that was it. He was always astute, in a way, a lone wolf. A lot of people, because even though we were a collective in a group, Bernie he wasn't a go out person. He didn't do the clubs with us. He was a kind of, he'd do the show and go backstage. He'd want to have a cigar and a Miller Genuine Draft.
Yes, that was drink.
And he would sit at the hotel bar with regular folks who had it might be business people. Some people may know who he was. Other people had no idea. But that was his move. Like, he was fairly, lonely. But, again, a brother, you could count on him. You could call him. You could go and pull up, have a great conversation, but not one for the, in a way, for the shenanigans, if you will. Like, he was a very grown man. I took a lot of that on. Like, a lot of people, a lot of people know me. I'm a guy that kind of stick to myself, even though I'm a Hollywood. I'm a loving and I'm a, kind person if I see you in public. But you don't see me outside my friend group a lot. You know what I mean? Like, I'm just tight and I keep it simple and I'm at home with the wife and kids. I just don't do a lot of extras, man,
Yeah, I respect that. That's in y'all industry, that's a really tough thing to navigate. So I respect that. So I'm going to switch gears for a minute and come to your book, Flipping Boxcars, which has been called a Valentine to close-knit Black families and tightly woven communities during the Depression and World War II. And while there are some humorous elements in the book, this is a departure from the Ced that we all know and love. Yes, that's right. Flipping Boxcars, y'all. So was this like when you decided you wanted to write this book, and I know it's connected to your grandfather, were you hesitant to show, your fan base a not funny version of yourself?
Yeah, I mean, it's one that you definitely, I would say hesitant, you kind of, it's one of these ideas that I loved, showing the different side of me. The book was something that I had, kind of bubbling inside of me for many years. It was, different versions of what I wanted to do with it. And as I started to shape it for a TV series, the book became clearer. Like the idea of it being a novel, the idea that it would feel like a Walter Mosley type story, one of my favorite authors, and I love his writing, and in that world, the way he was, really descriptive of our communities, and especially in those times in the 40s, 50s. And so, you just dive off the diving board at that point, right? You just decide like, all right, cool. At some point in time, either you're going to do it or you're not. And so I feel, that sure, it's going to be hard to take my audience into a place to where they don't necessarily, they're not going to get jokes from me. It's not going to be the joke book. But, it is a book that has my spirit, and it has a very story connection to who I am. And I think it's just a, more interesting read and, and a real interesting kind of POV. And of course, was fun for me to do, which I got to be motivated, to be able to be a creative, to be able to say, all right, cool, I'm going to do something that is unexpected and I feel good about it. And so once we finished it, I love the book. I want people to read it. I think it's amazing. It's so much fun to have. I did the audio, so either way you can listen to me talk about it, or you can read it.
This I was telling my producer, because I've been reading it. So when I'm at home with a chance, I'm reading it, and when I'm in the car, I'm listening to the audiobook. I love it, and it's so riveting. Like, you take us into a world. Some books you like them and you enjoy them, but you have difficulty trying to connect, like, and see yourself in it. You paint such a vivid picture that I really feel like I'm right there. Like the movie is playing in my mind as I'm reading the words. Like, I love it.
Yeah, and that comes from producing television and movies. I visualize things. I direct too, so I visualize things very clearly. I can see them, and so that I end up writing it like that, where you see the clothes and the buttons, what's going on, and why he breathe, and why he sit that way, and he turned his leg out because his foot was hurt. You'd be like, well, do I need to know all of that? But
It helps.
You just because you understand it. You're like, yes, I hate when my foot be on the car. You're right, exactly.
Yes. I've seen you mention how because this is connected to your grandfather, how as you've grown up, you've had people in the family like, oh man, you do this like your grandfather. You're so much like your grandfather, and I can relate to that because my dad's mom died when he was 16. I never got to know her. And all my life, my uncle used to be like, oh my God, you look just like Mary. And, my dad would be like, oh, you're like my mom. And even though this is a work of fiction, did writing this book help you feel more connected to your grandfather?
Oh, it's so much so. It was just a real extension of like you say, of this identity of who you are. Like, because we have habits, we have behaviors that we do that sometimes we can't explain. They're not necessarily even things that we picked up from our immediate parents. And so you wonder, like, where does this tendency come from? And it lets you know that DNA is a very real thing. Like it's somehow, you're connected. And I think that's what I learned while doing the research for the book and going back and trying to, find out the world and some of the other names and people he hung out with and why. And, and this was a move he did. That was a move he did. And of course, you see yourself in him. You can visualize, like you saw, oh, man, I think like that. Oh, man, I was once in that particular, that kind of predicament. I wish I had known this. I would have, I probably would have changed the way I thought about it if I, even knew my grandfather was ever in a circumstance like this. And that's the thing you get when you don't have an opportunity to spend time with them. But, again, writing this book allowed me to make him more real and, and that connection visceral. And so I recognize him as a person, which when I write the book, I just ended it with like 3 cliffhangers so that I could.
I asked you about some cliffhangers, man.
Because I just keep seeing the story go on. I didn't see the story ending because I can visualize the character living throughout, at least two more books.
Yes, I love it. A babe boy series. I love it. We're here for it because I'm telling you, it's so engaging. You want to know more. Like you get to it, you're like, wait, that's it. Can we get some more? So that's going to be great. So I know you said you originally started writing it as a TV show. Well, books, get turned into TV shows or movies all the time. And even though I know we're in the midst of a strike,
would
there possibly be some plans to turn this into?
Without a doubt. I'm definitely, I love the story too much, man, that I'm not ever going to take my foot off the gas. I'm definitely going to have this converted into a series, a movie or something. So that's going to be, my goal at this point. And, interesting enough too, is that, and shout out to these wonderful kids at the Newark Symphony Hall. I think they were part of the Cicely Tyson School of acting. These young folks, they performed an excerpt of the book on stage live, and it sparked the idea of also a stage play. Like this, it became like, oh, I can do the movie, but then you can see this live, like on a local stage, and be like, yo, that was a really great play. It's elements of this that can be a wonderful stage play. So all these things just kind of popped in my mind, and I was like, the ideas are endless, and you can just continue to always be creative and take one piece of art and make several pieces of art.
Oh, I love it, and I'm looking forward to whatever method you put out because it's that good. So final question, since this is the Bernie's Daughter podcast, I got to bring it full circle back to my dad. Now, Sid, I see in every interview you do when somebody mentions my dad, they always bring up this so-called beef between him and Steve.
Yeah.
What do you think that's about? Why do you think people are so fascinated with that?
I don't know. I mean, of course, it's the kings of comedy. They're both big personalities. And I'm assuming it's the thing that people feel like is why it was never another one, right? Like, because that's the biggest question mostly too is when y'all gonna do another one, man? When y'all should do this? Y'all should hand off. Who do you think the next kings are? Yeah, I mean, it's just never enough, kings of comedy questions, right? So, and I think that they're there, and it did get some publicity. That was the other thing. It made a couple of, news or magazines. I think the fact that they had this kind of disagreement with one another, and I again allude that to immaturity. Both people, especially Steve in this day and age, is not minoring on like those kind of things, those things that he felt like he had to stand on, especially becoming the business person that he's become. He would definitely identify what I was talking about more than anything, is that we had a really great brand that should exist in itself. We should be like New Edition. We can all be individuals, yet when we come together, our collective should be as unique as that experience, meaning that everything that's Kings of Comedy should belong to us. And then everything that's individually is individual, and we can all stand in our light, which we have done. I mean, DL, myself, B, when he, from his shows and movies and everything that he did, he was his own guy. And yet while we're the Kings, we're a thing. And I think that argument between them or whatever, that disagreement during that period of time just came up. It was early, what we call social media beefs. So we didn't really have Twitter. So to see it like in a Vibe magazine or something like that, that was big time. That was big time static right there. That's not.
He was sitting at home like, I need. Wait, what are we talking about here? What is this? So yeah, it's really interesting to see.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I do. Of course, those are regrettable moments you feel. And even as a person, I didn't interject very much at that time because I didn't even understand it either. It was never, to anybody that was there, it was never that in each other's face, right? It was that separately. So that's what made it like, okay, what's going on? Because if people fought while you was right there in front of me, you can, hey, let's sit down, let's work this out. But if people building up that kind of anxiety toward each other and they doing it separately, then you don't know what you mean. You feel like you missed something. You're like, I don't know that one. I don't really know. I don't know it to be that. So what's that all about, right?
Right. Yeah. Oh my gosh, this is so good. We could keep it going, but we have now come to the end. That concludes today's episode. Sid, thank you so much for being my first guest on my podcast. I truly appreciate it. For those of you watching, Sid's book, Flipping Boxcars, is available on book and audiobook. It's good either way. My thanks to you all for watching and listening at home. You could be doing anything, but you chose to join me, and I so appreciate that. I am Je'Niece McCullough, but y'all know y'all call me Bernie's daughter. And like my daddy told y'all, I ain't scared of you. So until next time, who you with?
Yo.
First off, welcome. Goddamn it, welcome. Who you with? You ready?
This is the Bernie's Daughter Podcast.
I ain't scared of you, motherfucker.
The show where you get a front row seat to the magic,
Who you with?
humor, and wisdom of the late, great Bernie Mac, as seen through the eyes of his loving daughter
Oh, I don't care about you talking about me.
and his famous friends.
Kick it! You don't understand.
know what's so great that you named this podcast exactly how people call you? You're the Bernie daughter.
The one and only Michael Collier.
Hello.
Man.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me to the show.
No, thank you so much.
So I'm supposed to cuss on your podcast.
No, you're fine. No,
Okay.
listen, it's the Bernie's daughter pod. Who was my daddy? Like, we can't even pretend. Like, we can't even pretend. Like, we cannot. Right?
I think Bernie and Sam Jackson created the word
And I can't wait. I know that all the other comedians are going to have wonderful stories about your dad, and just know that he's so proud of you, and keeping his legacy is important for us to keep the legacy, especially with someone like him, because it's just, so often it's real easy for us to forget. You are doing the right thing by doing this now.